Om, lead me from the unreal to the real, lead me from darkness unto light, lead me from death to immortality. Om, peace, peace, peace. As Diane just said, we have the Ask Swami session today, and the idea being that so many questions come into us from all over the world, and it's really impossible to answer them individually. So we thought of having this online forum. The advantage is the questions and the answers can be shared with the whole world then. Often, it's not so much that it is my question, I'll have to wait for my question to come up. No. Often these questions are something that everybody has. A lot of people have these questions. Sometimes when we listen to the questions and the answers, we get benefited. So, I was also told that the virtual audience might be a little less today. There is an India-Pakistan cricket match going on. So people from India might be distracted. So if it's cricket and Vedanta always loses the match. But that's why you see the importance of the preliminary qualifications. We call them sadhan chatushtaya, the fourfold qualifications for Vedanta, viveka, vairagya, and so forth. Vairagya means dispassion. That which is non-eternal, that which is not the ultimate goal, purpose, destiny of humanity, that you'll have to step aside from that in favor of spirituality, in favor of Vedanta. But it's been a perennial problem. For a perennial philosophy, a perennial problem. I've heard of this, it's an anecdote, but true. There's this monk who is to come on the bank of the Ganga in a village and teach Vedanta. So one of those students, a village boy, he became a monk later and he wrote this. He said, we used to go to the class and there would be people coming and sitting around the monk. He would sit under a tree and teach Vedanta. One day there were hardly anybody. I was there and one or two others, and the rest of the crowd had disappeared. And the monk was shocked. What happened? Where are the rest? He said, oh, what can we say, sir? A tantric has come. He has set up class on the other side of the river and everybody has gone there. So Tantra is much more attractive. You get superpowers like, you become something like Superman or Spider-Man, whatever. Yes, so dispassion. The discernment between the eternal and the non-eternal, and the dispassion for the non-eternal. Those are qualifications for Vedanta. They are called viveka and vairagya. All right, so we shall go into this, and Dan will ask a few of the questions which have been selected by our team. Very hard-working team. And then we will also take a few questions from the live audience present here, in-person audience. All right.
So, Swami, the first couple of questions are on the Ashtavakra Gita. Diksha Sharma from India asks, I seek some clarification on Ashtavakra Samhita. The 7th verse says that you are the seer of all. The 8th verse says, drink the nectar of faith, that I am not the doer. So my confusion here is, if the self is the ultimate reality and only subject, and the entire universe is just an appearance, then who is the doer?
Indeed, who is the doer? You are the witness consciousness, and you are not the doer of any action. And yet there is action going on. Who is the doer? If we are only pure consciousness and that's the only reality, what about action and the doer of action, the results of action, karma, all of that? Who is there? Who is doing what? So these questions are fundamental. If you confront these questions and make a breakthrough here, you will be able to grasp the essence of Advaita Vedanta. It's a very good question. I think Diksha is referring to the 7th and 8th verses of the first chapter of Ashtavakra, where it says, Drashtasi, you are the witness of all. And the next verse says, you can be convinced, drink the nectar of faith means have firm conviction that you are actually not the doer of karma. How do we understand this? Then who is the doer of karma? I'll give you two examples, and this will make it a little more clear, hopefully. One is, say, electricity. And you can see all the light here, it's because of electricity shining through the bulbs are shining because electricity enables them to do so. And if you were to switch on the fans, you would get air breeze from the fans. And an electric heater will give you, the same electricity will give you heat. So if you ask, who is the doer of all these deeds? Giving light, who gives light here? And who gives the breeze here? Who gives heat here? Who is that omnipotent thing? It's electricity through multiple devices. But in electricity by itself, does it shine? Does it give you a cool breeze? Does it heat up the room? No, it doesn't. It's not supposed to. That's not its inherent characteristic. But it can power the devices that do so. Similarly, consciousness, Brahman, Atman, our real nature, in conjunction with the mind and the senses, it lights up the mind and the senses and you become a knower. You, the witness and the knower make a distinction. Witness and knower. In Sanskrit, Sakshi and Pramata. Witness, don't take it in the sense of an act of witnessing. Just take it as like light shining. So consciousness shines. That's its very nature. It's not doing any activity. It's just being itself. But when that shining is in proximity to the mind and the senses, you say, where did the mind and senses come from? Put it aside for the time being. We'll see later. But in proximity with the mind and the senses, it becomes a seer and something that hears and touches and tastes and smells and thinks and remembers and desires and knows. And so the witness is now the knower when you put a layer of mind and sensory organs over it. Put a layer of the motor organs, that very consciousness, which is the witness consciousness, through the mind, through the body, uses the motor organs to walk and talk and do all of that. It becomes the doer. Another example would be, say, a dream. Suppose you dreamt that you were walking down Broadway. Now, after waking up, what would you say? That, it was just a dream. I was not in Broadway, I was not walking, I was just happily sleeping on my bed. But if you take the dream experience, and in the dream experience you ask, who was walking? You would say, well, if you press me on that, I am the only one who was walking. Not only that, the shopkeeper who was selling the goods, the actor on Broadway who was reading out his lines, all that I was basically, if you press me. But ultimately, none of that, because they are all appearances in the dreamer's mind. Similarly, from the perspective of consciousness, the world, the body, the senses, the mind, all of them are appearances in consciousness. Not very difficult to understand. And just compare it with the dream example. In your own dream, the mind by itself, does it not appear as a dream world? Does it not appear as a body in the dream and the mind and sensory system in the dream? In your dream, do you not feel? Do you say that in the dream, I can't see anything because after all I'm dreaming, there are no eyes here to see? No. There is a world to see and there are eyes to see, there are sounds to hear, there are ears to hear, and so on and so forth. And all of that, the objects of the senses and the senses themselves are all appearances in the dreamer's mind. Similarly, everything here is an appearance in consciousness. So, to the answer to your question, who is that who knows, or who is that who does any actions? Ultimate answer, nobody. Because there's ultimately nothing to be known and no action which is being done. It's an appearance. But If that seems too much and you want a straight answer to, no, there is action. Who is doing it? You are doing it. But I am pure consciousness. I do not do anything. Correct. But with the layer of the mind and the senses and the body appearing, from that perspective, you alone are the doer. Who else is doing? If you introduce one more factor, God, the God of religion, then you attribute everything to God. God, with the power of Maya, does everything. And we are just here for the ride. God is, what is the thing? That Jesus take the wheel, there's a song. So God takes the wheel. That is true. If you don't want to introduce God language and yet you don't want to go to all the way to the extreme of Advaita, saying that nothing is happening and no one is doing anything, in that case nature is doing, it's a very scientifically acceptable position. Material nature is doing everything. You are consciousness, the witness of the activity of material nature. What is material nature doing? Whole universe, Big Bang till now, created by material nature. Body, created, maintained, activated by material nature. Material nature is Prakriti. From the breathing to the flow of blood in our veins, to the activity of the brain and the neurons, even the mind, all of that is nature. Very much acceptable by science. Only thing that we will abstract from this is that you, the consciousness, are the witness of the activities of nature, or the experiencer of the activities of nature. You are not a product of those activities. This is the only place where we will very justifiably differ from the reductionist, materialist worldview. Whose worldview is this? Sankhya. This is a Sankhyan worldview, which differentiates between consciousness and its objects. All objects are in the realm of matter, and you are consciousness. So these are different ways in which you can answer this question. Yes.
So Anita Iyer from Seattle also has a question on the Ashtavakra Gita. I had a question on a couple of verses of Ashtavakra Gita in chapter 7 and chapter 15. I am using verse descriptions from Thomas Byram below. In chapter 7, verse 4 states, I am not in the world is not in me. I am pure, I am unbounded, free from attachment, free from desire, still. Even so am I. In chapter 15, verse 6, it states, for see, the self is in all beings, and all beings are in the self. Know you are free, free of I, free of mine, be happy. At the outset, the first two lines of both above verses seem to contradict themselves, but I believe they are saying the same thing in a different way. Is my understanding correct?
They seem to contradict themselves. They do not seem to contradict, they are flat out contradictions. In one verse, Ashtavakra says that I am free of the world. I am not in the world is not in me. There is no universe in me, no external world, no body, no mind, nothing. I am an unbounded, limitless consciousness, not just I. You might say, Ashtavakra, you are nuts. He's saying you are that. And in this other verse he says, what does he say? All the world is in me, everybody is in me. Second one.
The self is in all beings, and all beings are in the self.
The self is in all beings, and all beings are in the self. First he says, I am not in the world, not in all beings, not in the world, and the world is also not in me. And now he says, the self is in all beings, and all beings are in the self. You often come across this language in the Upanishads and the Gita. The self in all beings, and all beings in the self. Flat out contradiction. The world is not in me, the world is in me. In the Bhagavad Gita, there's a chapter, the 9th chapter. It's called the royal secret, the royal knowledge, Raja Vidya Raja Guhya Yoga. The yoga of the royal secret, the royal knowledge. What's this secret? What's this knowledge? Krishna says that Matsthani Sarva Bhutani, in me all beings are there. One verse. The next verse he says, Nacha Matsthani Bhutani Pashyame Yogamaishwaryam. All beings are not in me. And he puts them together, one after another. And then he says, this is the magic of my yoga. How is this possible? It's flat out contradiction. And yet this must be grasped. It's absolutely logical. And you will see, it makes complete sense. When we grasp this, we grasp Advaita Vedanta. One sadhu in Uttarakhand, he said, I heard him say this, जब दो विपरीत बात एक साथ समझ में आवेगी, आपको अद्वैत पकड़ में आएगा. When these two contradictory statements will be understood, not accepted, not believed, not in a Zen sense, a very cool thing to say. No, understood absolutely logically. And you'll see how clear and logical it is. It must be so. Then he says, then you will understand Advaita Vedanta. So very good question. We must confront this. This will open up the heart of Advaita Vedanta to us. What does it mean to say that all beings are in me first, and then say that all beings are not in me? It's not difficult to understand. I remember this very beautiful lake in British Columbia, near Vancouver, Loon Lake. Early in the morning, I was taking a walk there, and you've seen this, Dan has seen this, yes. It's a crystal clear lake without a ripple of water, a ripple on the surface of the water. Absolutely crystal clear. And there, if you look into the lake, you will see, it's surrounded by forests and hills. You will see the hills and the forest. You will see the blazing blue sky above. Everything you will see in the lake. In the lake you will see the sky. In the lake you will see the trees. In the lake you will see the hills. Of course, these are reflections. Now, think of the lake itself. In the lake, all of it is there. The sky and the trees and the hills. And yet it is true that none of it is there. If you actually touch the lake, what will you find? Water. You touch the sky in that lake, what will you find? Water. You touch the hill in that lake, what will you find? Water. Touch the trees in that lake, which appear in that lake. What will you find? Water. Obviously, you will say, Swami, these are reflections. And I can see the question in your eyes. It is a reflection. There is a real sky and a real hill and a real tree all around. Abstract that, bracket that out, keep that away. Why, you will say, you will protest, why should I do that? Remember, it's an example. Sri Ramakrishna would say, Upama Ekdeshi. An example is meant to prove a point. An example is not supposed to be exactly like what it is showing. In that case, it wouldn't be an example. It would be that thing. X is an example of Y. It's only because X and Y are different, you can use one as an example of the other, to say something about the other thing. But go further. I mean, even here in the lake example, the lake can honestly say, where is the sky and about the reflections, sky and the hills and the trees. The lake can say they are all in me. But wait a minute, that's not the end of it. The message is still there, that none of them are in me. Because in me, what is there? Water and only water. They all appear in me. You can get an even better example, the dream example, where, take the example of the man walking down Broadway. Now when you wake up, you say, Broadway was in me, and all the people there were in me, and the sky and the road and the buildings were in me. I myself was walking down Broadway. I was in me. In me means in me the dreamer's mind. And yet, I can say, none of them were in me. How can a street be in the mind? How can actually a physical concrete building be in the mind? How can people, living beings be in the mind? No, they were all appearances in the mind. They were all dreamt up by the mind. They were imaginations in dream, objects of fiction, fictitious. Can you not honestly say they were all in me? See, how does it work? When we are in the dream, these things appear separate from me. It seems I am walking down Broadway. Broadway is separate from me. The buildings are separate from me, and all those people are outside me. When I wake up from the dream, can I not honestly say with astonishment, wow, they were not outside me. All of that was in me. When I was dreaming, it was in me. So first, everything is outside me, just like what it looks like right now. It looks like this right now. The people are outside me and the building is outside me. Obviously, the chair is outside me and I'm sitting on it. There's an external world outside my awareness, which I'm experiencing through my awareness. That's what it feels like, step one. But when we wake up from a dream, what happens is whatever seemed external to me now is understood to be entirely internal to me. I imagined it all in my dream. Step three, you will also say, honestly, truly none of that was really in me, because they were imaginations. There really wasn't a building in my head. There's no space. Even the most empty head. There's no space for Broadway to be there. And by the way, all this, I'm not making up on the spur of the moment. These are arguments taken from one of the classics of Advaita Vedanta, Gaudapada's Mandukya Karika, the second chapter. Gaudapada, who was Shankaracharya's teacher's teacher, lived about 1400 years ago. The second chapter, Vaitatya Prakarana. There he gives these arguments, comparing the waking world with the dream world. So from that perspective, can we say, all of this is in me, the consciousness? And because they are all appearances in consciousness, there's actually not a physical world of concrete and trees and cats and dogs in consciousness. They are appearances in consciousness. What is the consequence of this? Tremendous consequence. First consequence is oneness. When you have an external world, we are this tiny creature only, and they are all outside me. They are different from me. I interact with them. Some are friendly, some are indifferent, some are inimical to me. But from the perspective of consciousness, and they are all in me, they are all nothing but me. I am one with all of them, or they are all one with me. All the living beings, not only all human beings, the ones I like and the ones I do not like, they are all one with me. They are nothing other than me. All the other living beings also, all the non-living entities, chairs and tables, sky and earth, they're all nothing other than me. I alone appear as all of them. There is oneness. There is limitlessness. If all of it is in me or appearing in me, where is my limit? Where do I stop? You see, understand the question. In the common sense waking world, where do I stop? I end here. Upanishad says, at the tip of my nails. Up to my fingertip, I am there. Beyond that, not me. It's other than me. It's the other. That's the common sense approach. But from this perspective, think about your dream experience. Where is the limit? Where is you, the dreaming mind? Where is your limit in the dream world? Nowhere, because everything that you see in the dream world, you have not stopped there. You pervade all of it, because it's all appearing in you. So this entire waking world and the dream world and the deep sleep blankness, it all appears in you, the consciousness. There is no limit to you. You are, not only everything is one with you, you are also limitless. These appearances have beginnings or ends. These appearances have beginnings or ends. But consciousness itself does not have a beginning or end. In consciousness, things have their beginning or end. So you are without beginning and end. You are eternal. The universe is one with you. You are infinite. You are eternal. Limitless and eternal. Whom will you hate? Whom will you love? Whom will you be partial to? Because they are all you. Who is your enemy? Who is your friend? What is it here in this world which you have not achieved, which you would like to have? Because it's all you. What is it in this world which you hate, which you would like to get rid of? It is all you. But then that's a big problem. All horrible things are me, but ultimately they are not you. They are appearances in you. Just like a nightmare might be in you, but it's not real. And that's the relief, that it's not real. It's an appearance. Beginnings and ends. All those we meet with, and you have a relation, and then we get separated from them. They're all one with you. They appeared as that person, and at one time they have gone now. But really they have not gone. That which appeared as that other person with whom you know, father, mother, husband, wife, children, and now they are not there, but that appearance is not there. That which appeared is still there, that is you. It's a very high point of view. But this is the way to understand Advaita Vedanta. Two apparently contradictory things. All beings are in me. And amazingly, none of it is in me. I am free of all beings. And that's not just Krishna, that's all of us. We are that reality right now. Good. So notice these two questions which came up. Can you see that they are basically the same question? The first question was that I am pure consciousness. I do not do anything. And yet, it is true that you, that pure consciousness, you are the only knower that there is, the only seer, the one who hears, smells, tastes, touches, the one who thinks, remembers, desires, loves, hates. There is none other than you, that consciousness. The doer of all actions. You alone are the doer, and yet it is true to say you are not the doer of any action at all. That was the first question. And the second question is, all beings are in me, but all beings are not in me. They are the same question, you see. If you can see that, one is from technically if you say one is from an epistemological perspective, the other one is from an ontological, metaphysical perspective. One is from the perspective of knowledge, knowing, and also doing. And the other one is from the perspective of being, existence, all beings. Should we have somebody to ask a question? Is there anybody who wants to ask a question? So many people. Why don't you come up here? Or where should they come? There, come here. Come here and ask the question. Tell us your name and then ask the question. Yes, while you're asking the question, you can take it off.
Hello, Swami. My name's Ashwin. I was curious about your thoughts on the role of psychedelics and spiritual and mystical experiences, especially also, for example, the role of soma or the kukyon in ancient Greek mysteries to occasion the theory that it might have been a psychedelic potion or substance that Arjuna consumed to have the vision that he had in chapter 11 of the Gita.
All right. The question about the role of psychedelics in spiritual life. Now, you might say this is a peculiarly American phenomenon or a very California phenomenon, but it's not really. It goes all the way back to ancient India. You'll be surprised to know Patanjali Yoga. In the Yoga Sutras, it's mentioned that one may induce some of these experiences through the use of certain psychedelic substances. Now, let's go a little deeper into this. A couple of examples. Right now, for example, we have the well-known neuroscientist, Christoph Koch, who is the chief scientist of the Paul Allen Brain Institute. So I was listening to his talk on consciousness, and he's been experimenting with psychedelics. There is one which is very popular among researchers now, psilocybin. I keep forgetting the name. So he's done that, and he said, I have had extraordinary experiences, and that has somehow convinced him about the importance of consciousness itself. Another very famous example was Aldous Huxley, a long way back, about 40, 50 years. His book, classic book, The Perennial Philosophy. Unfortunately, not many people read it now. It's a classic collection, wonderful collection. He was deeply connected with the Vedanta Society of Southern California. And in fact, he used to give talks in Hollywood, in the Vedanta Society there. He was a disciple of Swami Prabhavanandaji. But he experimented with, in those days, LSD. And Swami Prabhavanandaji actually warned him against doing that. They differed on that, but Swami warned him against using psychedelics. All right. What can it do and what can it not do? what it can do, in fact, the only thing that it can do is it can induce extraordinary experiences. You can, I suppose you can have visions, see lights and sounds, and the sense of you can also have the sense of a tremendous breakthrough, like an intuitive understanding, feelings of oneness, in fact, which echo what is mentioned in the texts, in the Yoga and Vedanta texts. Now, what does Vedanta say about it and Yoga say about it? From the yogic perspective, yes, these insights, these mystical experiences give you the knowledge which yoga aims at. So with this experience, you will realize that I am not the body and mind, and all of this is illumined by me, the one consciousness, and so on. So some kind of breakthrough might happen. Now the point that yoga will make, there is twofold here. One is that these insights can be and should be generated by yoga practice, not psychedelics. Why not? Yoga practice is long and arduous. Psychedelics is fast. You just pop a pill and you become enlightened. Because that long and arduous practice of yoga makes the mind sattvic, pure, and able to hold on to these spiritual experiences and benefit from them. Then it becomes a truly spiritual experience. Otherwise, it's like a flash in a pan. One gets an extraordinary feeling of elevation, feeling of insight, something tremendous, understanding something amazing. And then you're back to normal with a thud. Back to the external world, unable to benefit from that. How do you know you're unable to benefit from that? You will see no significant changes are coming in our life. There are ultimately no significant spiritual takeaways from, in the sense of our thinking, our speech, and our activity in the world. You still behave like the same old person. Worse, the second thing that yoga will say for this kind of practice is, it can be actually positively damaging. It can be addictive. Often, many of these substances were highly addictive. And they can be damaging to the personality. The very personality which is seeking to be enlightened, it can, instead of making you sattvic, it can push you down to rajas and tamas also. What is the state of an addict? Is it sattvic, rajasic, or tamasic? It's tamasic, which is just the opposite of what you are trying to attain. So, the takeaway from the yogic perspective is that, yes, they do induce certain experiences which are very similar to spiritual experiences, but they will not be classified as spiritual experiences because the mind is not capable of benefiting from them. The personality is not capable of benefiting from them. After psychedelics, does one become a saint? Does the sinner become a saint? No, emphatically. After long, arduous spiritual practice, struggle of yoga, does a sinner become the saint? Quite possible. That is the goal. The second thing would be that it can be actually positively damaging. So this is the takeaway from the yoga system. But let's go deeper. Now I'm going to the Vedanta or Advaita system. Advaita will make the preliminary point that what's the point of all these experiences? The point of experiences is to show you the truth of the claims of the spiritual path, that you are not the body, not the mind, that you are the limitless consciousness. This should become clear to you. That knowledge is the takeaway, not a series of wonderful visions. See, one of the problems of the New Age movement is, while it is liberal, while it is open, while it is peaceful compared to the old religions, but the New Age movement also sometimes becomes a kind of experience chasing, pill-popping experience chasing. Nowhere more so than our Central Park here. But experience chasing was not the goal of any of the ancient systems. Even the Patanjali yoga system, which talks about samadhis and various mystical experiences. The goal is enlightenment, not seeing lights or visions. What Advaita would say is that ultimately, what have you got when you see a burst of light, or even when you have the feeling, the oceanic feeling of oneness with everything? What Advaita would say is that, note, the same consciousness, the same awareness, you who did not see those things earlier, are now seeing those extraordinary things. You are having those extraordinary experiences. Very soon you will not have those experiences again until you pop the next pill. So, that same consciousness is there. It is to that one consciousness that experiences both extraordinary and ordinary appear. The experience, the content of the experience is not important. It is the one which is having those experiences, one which is illumining and revealing those experiences, that is important. Notice in Advaita Vedanta what we do. We never chase extraordinary experiences. The method of the seer and the seen, the method of the 5 sheets, the method of the waking, dreaming, deep sleep. Waking, dreaming, deep sleep, are they extraordinary experiences? So no, they are daily experiences of everybody. All of us have those experiences. You're awake now. It's getting a little hotter here, might fall asleep very soon. So, waking, dreaming, deep sleep. They are all ordinary experiences. And Advaita Vedanta claims that these ordinary experiences are enough. They are enough to give you enlightenment. How? If ordinary experiences were enough to give us enlightenment, everybody would be enlightened, because everybody has an ordinary experience, not the experience by themselves. Experience and the investigation of those experiences by Advaita. You need waking, dreaming, deep sleep, absolutely. But with that you must add Mandukya Karika. You need the physical body, the vital body, the mental body, the intellectual body, the causal body. I'm talking about the 5 sheets, the Annamaya, Pranamaya, Manomaya, Vijnanamaya, Anandamaya. That's all there already. Nothing mystical about it. It's all there. Right now. All of us have it right now. Plus, you need the Taittiriya Upanishad to guide you through it to the realization that you are the witness consciousness. So, the ordinary experience is sufficient for enlightenment in Advaita Vedanta. You don't need to pop pills. You don't even need to do extraordinary efforts to attain certain peculiar mystical experiences. And there's a special advantage today. Special advantage is, even if one has extraordinary mystical experiences, a scientist, a neuroscientist, a doctor might just say, I don't doubt you have those experiences. Suppose you have the experience of oneness of the universe. You feel one with everything. The doctor or the neuroscientist will simply say that that's because you had certain neurochemicals from affected your brain that way. You felt that. That does not mean the universe is one with you. It just continues to be the same old universe. You felt it. Just because you feel something does not mean it's real. But what does Advaita do? Advaita does not use extraordinary experiences to claim that the universe is one. No. What it does is, it uses ordinary experience and then reason, logic, rigorously argued logic, to show you the universe must be one with you from the perspective of consciousness, not from the body perspective. That is much more acceptable. That is much more difficult to refute. You can go to the same doctor, same neuroscientist, and you can do that. Actually, it's being done now. And tell them, we are not talking about mystical experiences, we are not talking about popping pills and psychedelics, but let's just take the experience which you doctor, you professor, you have it and I have it, and then reason on that. And you come to this conclusion, the same conclusion. Yeah, so that's my answer. Thank you so much. We'll come to you next. Now we can take a question from the audience, internet audience.
This question is on Bhakti from Raghav Kumar. Why is the path of Bhakti supposed to be dualistic rather than non-dualistic?
Why is the path of Bhakti supposed to be dualistic rather than non-dualistic? Well, in a very preliminary way, it's pretty reasonable. I love somebody. The moment you say, I love, immediately some people will ask, whom do you love? What do you love? There must be an object of love. I love what? You can even say I love everybody, but still there must be something that you love. The moment you do that, there are two. There is the lover and there is the loved. What you love, it must be in some sense separate from you. Even when you say, I love myself, it would be a peculiar way of putting it, but it might be all right. But there also, it is I, the experiencer, I, the knower, loving something about myself. There must be some quality, something that I'm loving. So there is a sense of dualism always in love, and nothing wrong with it. That enables love to exist. Now, can love be non-dualistic? Yes. Notice, the very tendency of love is oneness. It's not separation. It may start with two, but any kind of love actually unites the lover and the loved. So there's this funny story. Swami Vivekananda, right here in the United States, he once came to the place where he was staying and told the lady who was with whom he was staying, this devotee, I have fallen in love. And the lady laughed and said, who is the lucky woman, Swamiji? And he said, oh, it's not a woman, it's organization. But it must be something. So there is a separation, sense of separation. And that generates love. But that love tends to oneness. In Advaita also Bhakti is possible. There is an Advaita Bhakti which is possible. Not theoretically, you see it in the lives of great masters of non-duality. They realize I am one with Brahman, but they are full of devotion for God. From a distance, logically it seems to be contradictory. You are one with God, then who is loving whom? But Bhakti is entirely possible. If after Advaitic knowledge, one can walk and talk and eat and drive and do everything and give talks, all of that, why can you not have devotion for God? So it is possible. In Advaita Bhakti, what happens is, you realize your oneness with the ultimate reality, I am Brahman, but then this world of difference, it appears. You know it is all one reality, you know it, but it still appears as different. And you still appear as one person in this vast world. From that perspective, you can act in the world, and you do act in the world, and you can also have devotion for God. That oneness you realized, I am that reality. It now appears to you as your beloved God. Sri Ramakrishna put it beautifully. He said to Swami Akhandananda, his disciple, what is the relationship between bhakti and knowledge? He said in Bengali, Jejar Ishto Shetar Atma. Whoever is your chosen deity, that is the self itself. That is Brahman for you, your own self. See, Atma, I am the self, and I realize the infinitude of myself. That is Advaita Vedanta. That's a very simple way of putting it. I realize my own infinitude. That is Advaita Vedanta. Infinitude means limitlessness. And bhakti is, there is God, I have faith in God, I worship God, rituals, prayer, puja, whatnot, devotion, songs. So they seem to be two different things. Here Sri Ramakrishna brings them together. That Krishna or Kali whom you worship, you visualize in your heart and repeat the mantra and have love and devotion for God in that form, that chosen deity. And the Advaitic Atman, pure consciousness, they are one and the same. They seem to be two different things because of the intervention of a name and form and nama rupa vyavahara, name, form and function. So Advaita Bhakti is entirely possible. There's a beautiful saying, Bodhat prat dvaitam mohaya prapte manishaya bhaktyartham kalpitam advaitam advaitadapi sundaram. Very beautiful saying. It means, before enlightenment, before the realization I am Brahman, duality, separation, leads to samsara, moha, delusion. I am only this body, this person, and they are all separate from me. And there is this world This is our common sense approach. It leads to delusion, it leads to samsara, it leads to suffering. After enlightenment, what is enlightenment? I am Brahman, I am this limitless existence, consciousness, bliss. After enlightenment, if you again bring in deliberately bhakti artham kalpitam dvaitam and imagined duality. And it's easy to bring it in because it appears like that. It appears like a world out there, though it is one reality, but it appears to be a separate world. There appear to be separate people. Once this is accepted, you bring it in. And then, why would you maintain it? Why would you give it any importance? Bhakti artham. This world of duality for samsari people, for worldly people, is the world which worldly people inhabit, where they seek their pleasure, where they try to avoid their pain. But for the devotee, for the enlightened person, this world of difference is the occasion and the possibility of bhakti, of love. So bhakti artham kalpitam dvaitam, an imagined, a superimposed, a virtually generated duality. It is accepted in order to love God. Why would you do that? It says advaitadapi sundaram. It is more beautiful than non-duality. Non-duality is kind of dry. All the non-dual masters will be annoyed with me for saying that. You notice, when you say joy in non-duality, ananda, bliss, what kind of ananda are we looking at there? It is explained as limitlessness, purnatva, completeness. Since I am whole, since I am limitless, there's nothing that I could want. But that kind of joy, that kind of fulfillment is a very peaceful, a very philosophical kind of peace. It is not the delight you feel in, when you chant Hare Ram, Hare Krishna and sing and dance. That's a different kind of delight. So to taste that delight, there must be a component of dualistic bhakti there. Dualistic, not ultimately dual, but dualistic bhakti. And all this explanation is just a sort of theoretical way of, churning, trying to understand it. The best way is to look at the lives of enlightened people. Even in the greatest of jnanis, non-dual masters of non-duality, you will see a component of bhakti there. Swami Ranganathananda ji, who was the 13th president of our order. So he was a great Vedantin. He toured more than 60 countries in those days and giving talks on Vedanta everywhere. You felt that he was a person firmly centered in Vedanta. And when he was the president of our order, one of the things that the president of the order does in Belur Math, our main monastery, is every morning the president goes to the temple of Sri Ramakrishna, the temple of Holy Mother and so on. The temple's there. It's part of the routine. But that Swami Ranganathananda ji, would not do that every day. So we thought maybe it's a health issue or something, or maybe he doesn't want to, because he's Vedantin. For him, temples and images and puja might be secondary. So we are foolish, immature. We make this clear distinction, that is non-dualism, this is dualism. So I asked one of his sevaks. Sevaks means the assistant monks, or they are young monks who work with the president. What was going on? And he said, oh no, the problem was when he would go into the temple of Sri Ramakrishna, it was difficult to bring him out of that. He would keep saying, 5 minutes more, let me stay, little more. So it's not that knowledge of non-duality kills devotion. Not at all. It makes devotion real. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, I have 4 kinds of devotees. Couple of them are worldly, in the sense that they want things in the world. People are in trouble, in suffering, grieving, in sorrow. They are devoted to God. That's one kind. And they are devotees. The second kind is, they are all right, they have no problem, but they want something in the world, something better, something more. More power, more riches, more, let my book be a bestseller and so on and so forth. Things like that. They are also devotees, but they want something. And then there's a third one, the spiritual seeker, which would be people like who are here, us. Those who are seeking God realization. And then he says there is a 4th kind of devotee. Krishna says, who's devoted to me. Who? Jnanicha, the enlightened one. The one who has realized, I am Brahman. You, O Krishna, and I, we are not different. We are the one reality, the one limitless consciousness. And Krishna says, that person is also my devotee. And then he goes on to say, they're all dear to me, but dearest to me, closest to me is the enlightened one. Why? Very beautiful verse. He says, for I never disappear from his sight, and he is ever with me. For the rest, what happens is, it's a matter of belief, of faith, of psychological support, or a spiritual quest. I must have God realization. All of that is fine. But for the enlightened one, I am real. He knows me in truth. And he is always in me. He or she is always in me. So, bhakti after enlightenment, bhakti after non-duality. It's entirely possible. When you say why bhakti is supposed to be dualistic, there's a sort of a hint of, isn't it are you saying it's a little lower? No. Dualistically, non-dualistically, we are coming in touch with the same reality. All right, one more question.
There is another question on bhakti.
Yes.
Manoj Sahu asks, Swamiji, you said that God-fearing is not about bhakti, but most of the pujas and myths in Hinduism are all about do this or do that, otherwise God will punish you. Why this tradition?
So at one point, I think in the retreat, I had said that fear of God is not bhakti. But I'd also said that bhakti or devotion to God may start with fear. God is awesome. In the original meaning of the word and also in the American meaning of the word awesome. God is awesome. If you can conceive of God, when we first approach the very idea of God, it can induce deep reverence and can induce fear also. So many dualistic religions, theistic religions, start by inculcating fear of God. But what is the objection to that? The objection is fear is not a good friend to love. The ultimate objection, the ultimate goal being love of God, adoration of God, worship of God. Fear is not a good path to go. It may start there, but quickly it must proceed from fear to awe, to reverence, to love, to adoration, to worship. So, look at the gradations given in the path of bhakti. First, it starts with shanta bhava. Shanta bhava means something like the Advaitin has, an approach of complete calm and serenity in the presence of God. But higher than that is dasya bhava. The Lord is my master. I am thy servant. That's higher than the shanta bhava. But that's closer. From a calm philosophical contemplation of the vastness, awesomeness of the divine to the divine is a personal relationship. So the beauty of bhakti is, in Vedanta what we do is, we divinize our human relations and humanize our relation with God. We divinize our relations with the human. With everybody we see the divinity in you. We see God in you. And with God, we have a human relationship. So, master and servant, thou art my Lord, I am thy servant, is a human relationship. Higher than that, sakhya bhava. Not master and servant, friend. Notice we're coming closer. Friend. From shanta, the peaceful attitude of a philosophical contemplation, to dasya, the servant and master relationship, to friends. The Lord is my friend. Buddy. Then you go further. Vatsalya. The Lord is my child. So, baby the Krishna or Gopala or the baby Rama, Ramlala or the Divine Mother as a little girl or the baby Jesus. So, what is the point of seeing God as a child? It is to develop this Vatsalya bhava. Vatsalya means the love of a parent towards God. So that love of parent towards the child is now towards God. Now, if you think of God as your child, you don't go and pray to the child for things. Your whole thing is to take care of the child. you're overwhelmed with love and protectiveness and a nourishing attitude towards the child. And imagine having that to God. So it's a wonderful thing. But see how much closer it has become. And as we progress this way, all the paraphernalia, the power, the glory, the awesomeness, the fearsomeness of God drops away. God tries to come close to us, become as ordinary and as close as possible. That was the secret of the Holy Mother. She seemed as motherly, as simple as your mother back in the village, a typical village mother in Calcutta in the late 19th century. And she was the Divine Mother herself. So the purpose of appearing like that is to draw people closer. And then even higher than that is the Madhura Bhava, the relationship between the lover and beloved, Radha and Krishna and so on. So all of these attitudes, you see how they are bringing people closer and closer to God. And the fear component drops away and the love increases. So, yes, so fear is, it might be preliminary, but it's not, ultimately it's something that you must overcome and move ahead in the path of bhakti. And then the question he asked was about how in the stories in Hinduism we find God it's full of do's and don'ts and God is the punisher. All that is very preliminary. Not that in those stories there's much of do's and don'ts and God is the punisher. God is the punisher is sort of a symbolic way of saying good and bad are causal. We set into motion causes and effects. This is the law of karma. Good, good, bad, bad, and none escape the law. Vivekananda says this. Good actions lead to pleasant results. Bad actions lead to unpleasant results. And then you cannot... So this... And these results are given by God. In a theistic system, we always think of God as karmadhyaksha, as the lord of karma, the one who gives the results of karma. Yes. Can we have one question from the... Do you remember your question? Yes, to come.
Hello, Swami. Thanks.
Tell us your...
My name is Raj. I'm from Chicago. So one of my questions is very similar to the initial questions that we took, and it's to do with that popular example of clay pot. So now I understand that I'm this clay, and that's the only absolute truth, and that's what matters. And the form that we are currently, it's not permanent, and it's a lower plane of existence, if we may call that. Now, my question is, how do I realize what I've turned into, whether it's a clay pot or a sculpture or something else? Because to live in this material world or Maya, we have to realize. I'm sorry, I'm referring to my notes just because I want to have this.
We could just read it out.
Yeah,
Sure.
Just read it.
So unless I don't know that, how would I perform my karma? Say if I'm a sculpture and not a pot, then there is no point in trying to pour water into it. Likewise, if dharma is the rule of this material or Maya world, aren't all those rules made by the pots and not necessarily by the clay?
All right, if I understand, let me stop you right there and see if I'm understanding the question. You see that the knowledge that it is all clay does not erase the knowledge of the different parts. So, for example, the gold and ornament example. The realization that it is all gold still enables you to recognize a necklace as a necklace, a bracelet as a bracelet, and a ring as a ring. After realizing that it is all gold, you can still put the necklace on your neck and the bracelet on your wrist and the ring on your finger. Technically, what is meant here is nama rupa vyavahara, name, form, and function. They continue. After realizing that it's a movie, The actors in the movie continue to play the role. The hero plays the role of the hero. The villain plays the role of the villain. The car remains as a car and the street remains as a street. They don't start switching roles because they realize, oh, it's a movie, we can do whatever we want. No. The movie still follows its own script. But what you realize is that there is an underlying reality, which is the screen. And what we saw, which seemed to be the reality, is an appearance. These are the things that we realize. Similarly, here, what seems to be a fractured and scattered world, people are different from me, and there is good and bad, and this is the final reality which we are seeing. We begin to see that there is an underlying reality, this existence, consciousness, bliss, and I am that. From that perspective, I can navigate my way in this world much better. You have strength, you have freedom, you are not afraid, you are not subject to delusion, that this thing I must have, otherwise my life is unfulfilled. No. They're all appearances in you. This thing, this disease or this problem, this old age and death, terrible, I'm ruined, finished, what is the point of it all? No. You are still that infinite reality. So even if it comes, it's not a problem, the negative things. The positive thing, if one does not get it, it's still not a problem. So you can navigate your way through life. In fact, you can do it much better. Is this what you were asking?
Yes, but earlier you were mentioning about the dispassion. That's what I think is kind of happening with me. Like knowing this truth. I only see two options. Like either I'm not passionate about anything, I don't want to do anything anymore, or I just can do whatever I want. And so it kind of seems to take one to either extreme.
I see. The question there is something that many people ask. But when I begin to understand this, I seem to lose passion and drive for things in the world. Is this right? Is this wrong? Am I making a mistake? No, you're right. That losing the passion and drive for things in the world is a very good thing. Enough of the rat race. You must take a stand. Ultimately, this pursuit of things in the world, is it worthwhile? You must see that, has it been worthwhile for me so far? Last 20 years of my life, 40 years, 50 years, 60 years of my life, lifetime after lifetime, people have done this. Has it ever given fulfillment to anybody? It has not. Therefore, why should I invest so much in it that it is the thing? My job, my relationship, my vacations, my gadgets, my hobbies, these are the things which will give me fulfillment in life. They won't. There are only two possible outcomes of pursuing anything in the world. Either you will not get what you want and lead to frustration, or you will get what you want and lead to a mild disappointment. So, what is the way out? The way out is to be centered in this reality, in the realization that I am Brahman, and then take life as it comes. To do what, there's beautiful verses in Yoga Vashishta, I think. After enlightenment, what about work? It says the enlightened one does what has to be done with a smile. That is a much better way of living. Don't worry. It's not that you will lose much in the world. Not much. Nothing really huge will change in the world. It will go on. It is all determined by your past karma. So it will keep coming. Good and the bad will both keep coming. Your fulfillment will be within. See, why we are worried is, if I don't have passion and drive to do the things I was doing earlier, won't I lose fulfillment? Shankaracharya raises this question. In the Bhagavad Gita, you'll see 2nd chapter, when Arjuna asks the question, what is the nature of the enlightened one? Sthita pragya. How does such a one meditate? How does such a one walk, talk, interact with others? And Krishna says, Prajahati yada kaman sarvan partha manogatan, who gives up all desires of the heart. And so the question is raised by Shankaracharya. If you give up all desires, but satisfaction, fulfillment, happiness comes in fulfillment of desires. I have desires X, Y, Z and fulfill them one after another, then I'm getting more and more satisfaction. This seems to be the philosophy of life. Whether you think about it or especially if you don't think about it, this is the way life flows. So isn't this, if you give up all the desires, then what will happen to that person? There will be no fulfillment, there will be unhappiness. The next line, Atmani eva atman tushta, he says, Sthita pragya, your stabilized wisdom, you are centered in Brahman when you are fully satisfied by the Atman, by the reality, by existence consciousness, by your own limitlessness. The reason why we are unsatisfied, Buddhists call these hungry ghosts. We are like hungry ghosts. Why we are unsatisfied is we feel keenly our limitedness. One more thing, one little more money, a better job, better position, a little more recognition, a little more love in this world, then I will be happy. You won't be. This is a hard lesson to learn. Nobody ever has been. Look at the data in the world. Nobody ever has been. Temporarily you might be. For a few hours, few days, few weeks, that's it. Not more than that. Even the emperors have not been. The Nobel Prize winners, the superstars in Hollywood and Bollywood, no. Usually it's the other way around. They give the example of a crow sitting on a high building, perched on the top of a tower in the windy place, and it's barely hanging on. Who told you to sit there? Getting continuously blown up by the gale. So that's the problem with attaining any high position there. If you are looking for satisfaction from that. If you're not looking, you'll be perfectly comfortable on the throne and in the hut of a beggar also. You'll be perfectly comfortable. There have been philosopher emperors. I've seen in a couple of cases extraordinarily rich people, heads of companies, but very philosophical, very calm. They do not derive their satisfaction from their position or money or power. And that's a good position to be in. But notice, you don't need that position, power, or money also to be in that position. You can be perfectly all right as you are. Did I answer that question? Thank you so much. Very good. I pray to Sri Ramakrishna, the Holy Mother, Swami Vivekananda, to bless all of us. May that wisdom dawn upon us in this very life. May we be centered in reality. May our hearts be full of devotion. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.